Welcome to Stick and Puck Fantasy League's Week 15 recap, sponsored this week by Band-Aid brand adhesive bandages, now featuring your favorite Cars 2 characters. And now, let's get this recap started. Our first matchup is Egg United versus Los Mustachios de Austin. It was a narrow victory for Egg United, 120 to 118.4. Skinner was the winner of another MVP award, 17.2 fantasy points, his third consecutive MVP award for Egg United, and the fourth week in a row that he's been the team's highest scorer. Speaking of Lenny's Legends draft pick, Seth Jones was picked up and put up a respectable 8.1 fantasy points. The Mustachios dropped Sorokin halfway through the week, a hot commodity on the waiver wire picked up by Slay All Day. His goaltenders in the end combined for 26 fantasy points. Maybe that was a premature dropping. We could perhaps blame the loss on three factors, two being Lawson Krause and Jaden Schwartz almost had 0 points combined, and then there was the incident that will forever be known as the Martin Luther King Day blunder, leaving an injured Vince Dunn in the lineup. We'll look at the graphs. We see that the Mustachios actually got off to a big lead on day one. But then Egg United started to claw back and went into the lead. You can see it over here with actually the Mustachios somehow. Wait, that's Egg United here crossing over into the lead. But then on the final day, the Mustachios attempt a final push to get back into the lead, but they just come up a little bit short. 1.6 points short to be exact. So it was Egg United going to 8-7 while the Mustachios dropping to 9-6. We'll have a closer look at the standings at the end of the matchups. Next up, it's Lenny's Legends versus How Is This Happening? This was a convincing win, 130.3 to 70.2. It's a huge week for recent acquisitions, Cale Makar and David Pastrnak. The duo combines for 30 fantasy points. Pastrnak is the MVP with 15.4 points. Perhaps I've been complaining about Shesterkin. He's been up and down, but he did put up 5.6 points in total this week, and the duo of Shesterkin and Demko combined for 15.6 fantasy points. It's been a disastrous stretch for How Is This Happening? After getting off to a great start this year, they're now losers of 4 games in a row. Talbot appears to be malfunctioning. He had just one start in week 15 and ended up getting negative 5.4 points. Streaky players are cooling off. Even Kucherov is cooling off. Only 6 points, I believe, in week 15. And of course, healthy players such as Dylan Larkin and Kyle Connor are stuck on How Is This Happening's bench. We could go straight to the second graph, and this one really tells the story. It was never close. Lenny's Legends goes to 12-3, while How Is This Happening drops another game. They're down now to 8-7. Our third matchup is Doketown Danglers versus Staying Alive. If you recall, this was the marquee matchup. Both clubs came into the week having won 3 matchups in a row, but it was Staying Alive who continued the streak, now winners of 4 in a row. They won 111.1 to 93.9. Staying Alive is now 5-10, while Doketown Danglers are 7-1. It was a coal slaughter from Staying Alive's favorite, their darling, Cole Caulfield, 13.3 fantasy points. Maybe he'll get the 50 goals they were expecting when they drafted him. Probably not, but doing better this week. Impressive work by Staying Alive to retool the roster. That would include Kaprizov, who is their MVP, 18.4 fantasy points. Doketown, as we mentioned, their streak ends. Connor McDavid disappoints, 5.9 fantasy points. The Oilers are winning, but McDavid is not putting up those fantasy points that he did in the previous year. Doketown did get 12 fantasy points from the goalies. Actually, I believe there was only one goalie, Hellebuck. I don't know why there was only one goalie started. We'll have to find that out later in interview of Doketown Danglers post-recap show. No skaters in double digits. That's surprising because the Danglers are a high-scoring club. Perhaps that had to do with the Penguins only playing 2 games this week. Looking at the graph, it was close. Doketown actually got into a lead, as you can see, but then it was a big day 4, really, that put Staying Alive way out in front. That continued on day 5. Doketown tried to get back in it on day 6, but another strong day on day 7 for Staying Alive, and they get the victory. It really wasn't that close in the end. Next up, we have Skill Stick Fail versus First Aid, a father and son matchup. It was the son winning. Skill Stick Fail with the victory, 130.5 to 91.2. Skill Stick is now 4-11, while First Aid drops to 11-4. It seems to be feast or famine for Skill Stick these past few weeks. They surprised this week with a large total into the 130s. I have no idea what this first line means, but what we do see is that Logan Thompson, trade acquisition, is the MVP with 21.2 fantasy points. He and Vasilevsky combine for a massive 27.8 fantasy points. You could say that a tale of Thompson's was told in Week 15. Logan with the huge total, 21.2, while Tage Thompson couldn't find the range. He had only 0.9 fantasy points. His totals have dried up like a Thompson raisin. By the way, you say 1 fantasy point, singular, no S at the end, while you say 0.9 fantasy points, plural. But 0.9 is less than 1. Just doesn't make sense. Anyway, Mitch Marner had a first-round performance, 12.1 fantasy points. And injuries loom large for Team 1, renaming themselves First Aid this week. 4 skaters record 3 or less, should be fewer, points on the week. Drysdale, Toffoli, Rust, Barkov. A couple of those guys at least were hurt in Week 15. You could look at the graph. Really, the only thing to say here is day 4. A huge day for Skill Stick Fail. You can see that on the graph. Maybe Team 1 had a bit of hope here, but then day 4, all hope was lost, and they drift, go on to a convincing 40-point victory. Our final matchup is Slay All Day versus Forest Hills Flames, a father-daughter matchup, and it was the daughter winning 131 to 108.2. Eek, it's Eck, Joel Eriksson Eck with a haunting 18.8 fantasy points. He's the matchup's MVP. He saves Slay from an eerie goaltender-induced negative 3.2 fantasy point drop. This victory breaks their 4-game losing streak. Will they have enough to recover after falling 4th in their division? It won't be easy, but perhaps if they continue to get performances like this from people like Eriksson Ek, then they might be able to do it. Looking at the Flames, we wonder if they're a little too loyal to their draft picks. They've been struggling all year, and still they've kept relatively the same mix of players. Jake Ottinger was in net this week as Aiden Hill's return has been shrouded in much mystery. Now, adding Surrey, BC native Tristan Seth Michael Jerry would have gained the Flames 10.6 points, but even that would not have been enough to close the gap. We'll look at the graft. Slay all day. Got off to the lead. Forest Hill Flames got back a little bit on day 2. You can see it here. That's as close as it got. And that gap remained fairly consistent all the way to the end for the Slay victory. Now it's time to look at the league-wide points. You look at the top, you see yellow, that's Lenny's Legends. They widen the gap between first and second this week. Then we have the bluish group. They're back. The bluish group is Egg United. How is this happening? Team 1 and looks purple to me, Doketown Danglers. And the brown is the Mustachios. They're in 5th. And Slay All Day. Here we have How Is This Happening continuing to drop. Forest Hill Flames look like they are past How Is This Happening. And then we have a tight one at the bottom between Staying Alive and Skill Stick Fail after Skill Stick's big point performance this week. It's time now for a new feature, the Stick and Puck Power Rankings. This is where we factor in both record and recent performance and the outlook for the team going forward. So we're going to start at the bottom. Number 10, Forest Hills Flames. Number 9, they've been coming on lately, but still number 9, Skill Stick Fail. All right, this is where it gets interesting. Number 8, the team that has been struggling the most recently. How is this happening? Next, moving on to number 7, they've been moving up. They've been winning many games in a row, but still, we got to keep them at number 7, Staying Alive. Number 6, we're going to give that to Slay All Day. Going to 5th, in the power rankings, the Doketown Danglers. Now, for the top 4. Number 4, the Mustachios de Austin. Number 3, Egg United, who beat the Mustachios in Week 15. Number 2, First Aid or Team 1. And then the top team in the power rankings is Lenny's Legends. Let's take a brief look at the standings now. First Aid still sits atop the Prince of Wales division at 11-4, even though they dropped the Week 15 matchup. The Mustachios, however, also dropped their matchup. They're 9-6, 2 games back. How is this happening? Also lost. They're 3 games back. The only team that won in this division was Staying Alive, going to 5-10. Now they have a 4% chance of making the playoffs. Forest Hills Flames sits at 3-12, 8 games back. Going over to the Clarence Campbell division, Lenny's Legends still atop the division, 12-3. They're 4 games up on Egg United, which is now 8-7. The Danglers are 500, as are the Slay All Day, 7-1, 4.5 games back. And Skill Stick Fail got that win, but they remain 8 games back, 4-11. And now it's time for everyone's favorite moment in the recap, the marquee matchups. Let's look at Week 16's matchups. First of all, how does Doketown Danglers have 1.11 points? I've been trying to figure that out. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe it's another ESPN glitch. Let me know in the comments if you have the answer. Looking at the matchups before we pronounce which is the marquee matchup, let's go through them one by one. We have Staying Alive versus Egg United. Staying Alive is looking for their 5th win in a row. Egg United has really been coming on. They're looking to go 9-7, solidifying that 2nd spot in the Campbell Conference division. That looks like a good matchup. Going on to the next one, Los Mustachios versus Lenny's Legends. The Mustachios have fallen off a bit recently. Lenny's have won, I believe, 3 in a row. Looking to continue to remain on top of the the Clarence Campbell division. We have First Aid looking to bounce back against the Doketown Danglers, who are also looking to recover from a loss in Week 15. Then you have Forest Hills Flames and Skill Stick Fail, the two teams at the bottom, 3-12 and 4-11. They're looking to Skill Stick Fail, that is, to remain out of the basement, while Forest Hills Flames want some company in the basement. And then the fifth matchup is How Is This Happening versus Slay All Day. How Is This Happening is trying to stop the bleeding, but they continue to fall down the standings, while Slay All Day wants to build on that big win in Week 15 to do a final push after struggling a big push for the playoffs. Which one is the marquee matchup? Well, for the second week in a row, it features the up-and-coming team Staying Alive. This is your marquee matchup, Staying Alive versus Egg United. All sorts of playoff implications in this one. And now it's time for predictions. Let's start with that marquee matchup. Staying Alive versus Egg United. Who's going to win? Let's wait for that one at the end. Let's go to the second matchup. Mustachios versus Lenny's Legends. We're never going to predict against ourselves. We're going with the Legends. First Aid versus Doketown Danglers. They're still struggling with some injuries. Danglers need to get McDavid going. This is a tough one. Who will we go with? Kind of a toss-up. We're going to go with the more consistent team throughout this year. We're going to go with First Aid, a.k.a. Team 1. Next is the Flames versus Skill Stick Fail. Which fail will show up? The one that gets 80 points or the one that gets 130 points? It's a tough one, but we're going to go with Skill Stick Fail. And then the fifth matchup. How Is This Happening versus Slay All Day? It would be crazy to pick How Is This Happening due to their recent performances. We're going to go with Slay All Day. Let's circle back to Staying Alive versus Egg United, the marquee matchup for Week 16. Who will come out on top? We've done the calculations, we've crunched the numbers, we've scouted the matchups, the teams, the games, the players, recent performances, injury history. We're going to go with Egg United. Staying Alive's streak will end at 4. Thank you for watching Week 15 recap. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you next week.